Hello and welcome back to It's What I Do. Today's video is in response to one of my subscribers, Mr. Smithy63, asking questions about my filtration system. So I said I'd do a little video on it, which is probably going to turn into a long video because I do waffle. So in here, let's get on with it. Right, so I'll quickly show you what I used to run before I've just made all these changes, before we go on to the actual thing as it is now. So what I used to have was two pumps running in the pond, and they used to sit on like a small header tank which kept them about 10 inches off the bottom of the pond. The first pump that I run the main filter system, was this one. Hopefully you can see that. It's a Blagden 3000 to 6000 Vari pump, and a really good pump, really good. Maximum wattage it used to use was 35 watts on full power, and it was pretty good. And the other one that I used to run was a Superfish Eco Pond, I think it was called. Can't find a box for that at the minute, so I don't know what it was. And that was a 5,000 litre pump. So in total I had an 11,000 litre turnover at maximum. But of course you can't run it at maximum because you lose quite a bit for head height and head pressure on the pump. So it never used to run at that sort of quantity. So the Blagden pump, that run the filter system, so that did me my alpha grog filter and the trickle shower filter thing. And the Superfish pump used to run through, hold on one second. So the super pump, Superfish pump, whatever it was, super pond pump, get it right, that used to run through this Blagden pressure filter, which is a 6000. It's got a built-in UV lamp on the top, and that used to run to the air source heater. Worked fine, sort of, but this was a real pain in the butt to clean out. It's got a knob on the top there. You're supposed to just turn like that to flush it, but it wasn't very effective. So quite often you used to have to actually take it apart, take all the foams out from inside and clean them manually, which is a pain in the arse. Yeah, real pain. So what actually spurred me into sorting out the upflow filter was I actually broke one of the tubes inside this, and I couldn't get the bit that was remaining out very easily. I mean, I will do it, but because this filter might do somebody a turn, so it's probably worth me doing it and just passing it on. But yeah, it's a pain in the butt to try and keep it clean. So that was the old system. Let's have a look at the new system. The new system, what we've got. If the fish will move out of the way, they think they're going to get fed. I don't know if you can see it down there with the reflection. With the pump sitting down there on the bottom. That's a Evolution Aqua 20,000 litre pump, and then we've got the control unit for it here. Now that's powered from, if I can find it. Oh, it's in there now. I've got a little junction box in there that connects to this float switch. If you've watched any of Derby Coy's videos, he actually did a video on installing a float switch, and I basically followed his process and how he did it. So there's a float switch there. If the water goes down, I'll just lift that up to sort of demonstrate it, like so. You see the pump goes off. So that will safeguard the pond if one of the pipes burst or something like that. So that just sits there. So that's the power side of it. What I've got is this pipe here connects to the pump, and this is a 2-inch flexible pipe, runs up out of the pond to this Y splitter. It's an Awazi splitter. Takes a 2-inch feed on one side, and then on the outsides it takes 2 1.5-inch pipes. And you've got these control valves on the top here, so you can shut them off and just turn it like that and it shuts it off. Like so. You know, I'm saying it again, like so. Yeah, so that's how it splits. Now this side goes to the standard filter system, and this side goes to the heater system. So at this point it splits into two circuits. So we'll cover the heater side first. So that pipe there goes straight up and straight into the left hand upflow filter. So that goes up to that. On the top of this, I don't know if you can see because it's quite dark, let's open the door properly. On the top of this we've got a shut off valve, and then we've got an air pipe to allow air into or out of the upflow filter, because otherwise if you shut that off and start pumping air in, what happens is the one-way valve, which I didn't show you, builds up too much pressure against it and it will release backwards and allow that to flow through. Which I did on a couple of times, forgot to do it while I was getting used to it. I can't really show you the one-way valves because they're all sort of underneath insulation, so I can't really show you that. But I've got 2 one-way valves on the feed pipes, so it will allow water to go that way, but it won't allow it to come back. And that saved me having to put extra valves on the bottom of the upflow filters. So yeah, so that's that one. Comes up here, that comes out, comes around the back of the cabinet, and then goes to the air source heat pump, which is a Dream air source heat pump. It's a 5 kilowatt one, so it takes 1 kilowatt power in and puts out 5 kilowatts of heat. Now on that one we've got a little control panel around the side here, like so. Don't know if you can make that out. There's a little control panel there, but the problem with that is it doesn't lower the temperature far enough. The range on the temperature probe in there isn't good enough. So what I did was wired in an external thermostat. I searched for ages to try and find a proper housing for it, couldn't find one, so what I've done is actually put it inside 2 Tupperware boxes. We've got this control unit here. As you can see, the pond temperature at the moment is 19.6, so that's pretty good. It's set at 19, so if it goes down to 19 it kicks back in, heats it up to 19.5. So that's what it's set at the moment. It does kick in during the night, and it has done during the day a couple of times recently because our weather's not been that good, as you know. So that's that. From that you've got another wire that runs down here, this wire here, which is the temperature probe, and that just sits in the pond on the shelf that's there. So that's that side of it. Let's get this back on. On the back of that we've just got 2 wire I don't know what they're called, glands I suppose, sits on there, just keeps it waterproof. The Dream air source heat pump works well, does its job. It's not the most economical. It does use about 1 kilowatt of power when it's running, but it pumps out quite a nice amount of heat, so it isn't on for too long. There are better ones out there, but this was the most affordable that I could get. As you've heard me say umpteen times before, I don't have a lot of money. If I had to buy another one now, I just couldn't do it. The pond would have to go unheated. But I had the money at the time, so yeah, I bought that. And I've had it 2 years now, and it's worked fine, absolutely fine. So that's that. Water comes in this one, comes out that one, and that returns back to the pond. And I've got a flexible pipe here, this one here, that feeds down towards the bottom of the pond. So it's about, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches off the bottom of the pond. So it pumps the hot water right the way down. Say hot water, warmer water, right the way down to the bottom. So it heats the entire lot. So that's the heating circuit. Now we'll look at the filtration circuit. Now that runs on this side. So that pipe there comes up and goes into my Evo 30 UV lamp. So it comes in here, passes through the Evo 30 lamp and comes out this side, and that then feeds to the second upflow filter, the new one I've just added. Now this one's slightly different. We've got the same setup down the bottom, with the valve there. We've got a one-way valve on the pipe behind there, so water will only flow in, it won't flow out. We've got the same airline at the bottom, but I haven't put one at the top. Now the reason for that is I needed to be able to shut the original one off so it didn't pump air into the air source heat pump, because that air source heat pump has got a nasty habit of air locking. It's not such a problem now I've got the massive pump on there, because all I do is turn the power up on it and push the water through, and it blasts the air out of the air source heat pump. So that's not a problem now. But yeah, I put that on there so I can shut it off, stops the air going in. This one I don't need to worry about that, because this is just going to my filters. So the water passes through here, no need for an air valve, no need for a shut off at the top. So I just drop the water down a little bit so it comes down to about here, bubble it up, drop it out, clean it as you do normally, and all that goes up there is air. So once it leaves there, what it does is it comes out down here, across the back here, and into my Alpha Grog tank. Now that's got 1.5 inch inlet and 1.5 inch outlet. Where was I? Sorry, the camera shut off. Yeah, so it's got 1.5 inch inlet and 1.5 inch outlet. So this is slightly pressurized. So theoretically this should have the same pressure in there as the pump is putting out. Now there is a downside to that, because what it means, if I take those off the top just so you can see it. Oh. This is just bubble wrapping insulation that I put on it last year to try and keep the heat in. This has got a metal band that runs around the lid, and that forces the lid down onto a rubber seal inside. Now the problem I have is if I turn the pressure up too much on that, it overcomes this seal and it starts leaking around the top. So what I'm thinking of doing is actually changing the outlet of this to a 2-inch pipe, and that should allow me to put more flow through. So yeah, at the moment water comes out of this into this one, into my little spray bar, which because of having the foams and such like on there, I turned it upside down so the water sprays upwards before spreading out. Because if I turn it over the other way, it was just going straight into the foam and doing too small an area. So yeah, I turned it upside down so that it sprays it out better. So it flows into there. That goes through all the pumice, and the pumice is a fraction below there, so you've got that height full of pumice. If you watched the other video, I showed you how it's all put together when I cleaned it. So that's that, and then down here we've got 2.5 inch outlets, and they run back towards the pond, and I'll show you those. But let me just put that back. Oh. The first outlet from the shower trickle is this one. I'll lift it up, it obviously stops until it fills up again. So you've got that sort of flow coming out of that one, and that just goes back straight back to the pond. And then the second one comes along the back here and comes up behind this little water feature, and the pipe, I don't know if you can see it, it's a bit dark behind there, goes between the top layer and the bottom layer of this, and it's just trapped in there. So during the winter all I do is take that pipe out and feed it straight back into the pond. So that comes into there, feeds into here, which I filled with pumice. You can see the pumice there. Now I had to put this little cage on here because the pumice tends to float, and it was floating out and going over straight into the pond. So I put this on there, stops it from blocking up the exit, and stops the pumice from flowing out. So yeah, it goes into that. That acts a bit like a river, I suppose. Then that returns to the pond as a little like waterfall out of the water feature. So that's the basic setup. Now the ideas behind it. The barrel that's filled with alpha grog here, it was doing two things. Before I put the upflow filter on, I've got a set of foams in the top there. I've got a coarse foam, a medium foam and a fine foam. So that would catch the majority of the debris coming out of the pond. You then have the water go into the alpha grog, and it travels down that way, and in there's a pipe with a 90 degree on it that goes down and allows, it's got a cage on the bottom, so it draws the water from down near the bottom to bring it back up and through. Now the idea behind that is it acts as sort of a river. It works from that sort of principle. So there's no air going into there, so it should all be anaerobic. There will be a slight amount of aerobic bacteria in there, but a lot of it is going to be anaerobic. So it does that first before it goes into the shower filter, which will have a certain amount of air. It's not as much as a normal shower because it's fully enclosed. Normal shower you would have it in trays that allow air to come into it as the water passes through. Unfortunately this sort of system doesn't do that, but it still works the same way as a shower. You get most of your aerobic activity in this one. There will be some anaerobic bacteria going in there, probably more than you'd get on a normal shower, but then the aerobic side of it is going to be less. So yeah, This was actually set up from an idea taken from the Pond Guru's videos. He did one of a wheelie bin about half the size of this, and about a third of the capacity. So I just sort of upscaled that. Used it's a 120 litre wheelie bin, and that's full up to about, I don't know, 3 inches from the top, 3-4 inches from the top of pumice, which is the best media I could afford at the time, and it works quite well. It does work quite well. So that's the filter set up, and the flow that we've got through it. I'm running the 20,000 litre pump. Is currently running at 32%. The reason why I moved away from the other two pumps was because of the upflow filters. The other two pumps just don't have the head height to actually manage these, whereas that one does. Even though we're probably not putting through any more water, it's probably about the same quantity of water, because the upflow filters need to take the water up to nearly 2 meters high, I suppose. It's up there somewhere, and nearly 2 meters high. I needed one that had a better head pressure than the two pumps that I was using, so that's why I changed that, and that does an excellent job. It's using about the same amount of power, but the head pressure is so much better. Well, you can see the amount of water that's coming out of there. It's pretty reasonable. So in total, I estimate the pond gets turned over about 2 to 2.5 times an hour. That's the entirety of the water gets turned over at that rate. So it's probably double what I need. For that size pond, they reckon you should turn it over sort of once an hour, once every hour and a half. Well, I turn it over twice to 2.5 times an hour, and that's what I say about being over filtered, which that then means I can have more fish in it. When I do all the water tests and such like, the water is actually spot on, 100% spot on. So you should always filter to the amount of fish you've got, not the size of the pond. That I'm afraid is a bit of a myth. There's two schools of thought on it. You can't overstock a pond. Some people say you can, but you can't. What you can do is under filter a pond, and you should always filter to the amount of fish that you've got. Now this pond, probably most people would say it's overstocked, and I had one comment saying about the fish haven't got room to move. Well, that's not true. They're not in a static position, so they've got the entire pond to swim around in, because when that one swims, the other one swims, and you get the drift. The entire pond, so they've got the entire pond to swim. They're not that crowded. If you was to get them all up into one area, they'd probably take up 1/10 of the pond, not even that. Certainly not in volume. So it's not overstocked, it just looks it, and it's filtered well adequately for the fish that I've got in there. In fact, as I say, it's probably over filtered for what I've got in there, but I'd sooner be over than under, definitely. The disadvantages, when you've got a small pond like this, even though you've got the filtration system to handle it and all the rest of it, the problem you have is when things go wrong, because it's a smaller volume of water, they go wrong very quickly. So you do need to keep a good eye on it, and as long as you don't make stupid mistakes like I did in the last video, your fish do fine, no problem at all. Now I've been keeping fish 25 years, something like that. And you learn new stuff all the time. There's things that I'd never come across before, happened recently. Up until just recently, I'd never anaesthetised a fish, or sedated, that's probably an easier way to say it. I'd never sedated a fish, but because of the damage old blue boy got over there, I had to do it. I had to sedate a fish. So that's a learning curve. So yeah. So anyhow, that's the filtration system. I hope you found that interesting. So that's going to be about it. Big thank you to Mr. Smithy63 for asking quite an interesting question and being interested in it. So I hope that answers your question and shows you how my system's set up. As always, there's going to be changes being made. That's part of the hobby, isn't it? We all make changes to our systems and whatnot. And I've got some ideas for different types of filter. It's just a case of, again, the money and being able to afford it. Whether I need to do that now, I don't know, because the upflow filters are working excellently. I know most people have them as polishers and such like, but they work excellently as a pre-filter. As long as you clean them out sort of every couple of days, 3 days, something like that, they work brilliantly, absolutely brilliantly. And of course you can't push too much flow through them, because the problem you have, let me just show you this. The problem you have, the water flowing through catches all the dirt and stuff at the bottom. Yeah. If you put the flow up too high, it will flow through there, no problem whatsoever. But what it does is it pushes the dirt further and further and further up through the media, and it will do that quite quickly. And then of course once it gets to the top, it's just pushing the dirt straight back out where you don't want it to go. So you have to keep the flow down to a reasonable amount. Let's say these are running, they've probably got about 3,000 litres an hour going through each of those. It's probably around that sort of an amount. If I'm running the pump at 32% on a 20,000 litre pump, that would be somewhere around 7,000 litres an hour. Maybe a little bit higher, might be 7,500 litres an hour. But then you've got to account for the 2 metre head height, so you're probably dropping that down to about 6,800, something like that. 6,000, yes, I don't know, something like that. And it's split equally now between the two, so they're probably taking just over 3,000 litres an hour through each of those, which is quite good, quite good. Right, that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you next time.